You check your bank account before you check the weather. You know your salary down to the dollar. But you've never once sat down and asked why you spend the way you do. Why some months feel like enough and others never do. Here's the strange part. Most of what determines your financial life has nothing to do with math. It has almost nothing to do with intelligence either. It has to do with how you feel about money and where those feelings came from. That's the entire argument of a book called The Psychology of Money, written by Morgan Housel. He spent years working in finance, watching brilliant people go broke and ordinary people quietly become wealthy. And he kept noticing the same thing. The wealthy ones weren't smarter, they just behaved differently. So what does that mean for you? What is it actually costing you to keep making decisions on autopilot? Let's find out. He's careful to say, this isn't a book about specific investments or tax strategies. There are no stock picks in it, no formulas to memorize. It's closer to a study of human nature, using money as the lens, because money is one of the few places where our fears, our egos, and our hopes all show up in the same decision at the same time. Housel opens with a story that sets the tone for everything that follows. A janitor named Ronald Red worked a gas pump and swept floors for most of his life. He wore the same coat for years. Nobody thought much of him. When he died, he left behind $8 million, almost all of it to his local library and hospital. Around the same time, a former executive at Merrill Lynch named Richard Fosconi filed for bankruptcy. He had degrees from top schools. He had run a major financial firm. He lost his fortune to debt and an expensive lifestyle he couldn't sustain. One man had no financial training. The other had built a career on it. Yet the janitor ended up wealthier than the executive. Why? Because building wealth was never really a finance problem. It was a behavior problem. And once you see that, you start to understand your own habits differently. The book breaks this down into a handful of core ideas, each one reshaping how you think about saving, spending, and risk. Let's walk through 3 of the most important. The first lesson is this: time does more of the work than talent ever will. Warren Buffett is usually held up as the greatest investor alive, but Housel points out something people miss. Buffett's fortune wasn't built mainly on picking better stocks than everyone else. It was built on starting early and simply not stopping. Most of his wealth arrived after he turned 60, not because his strategy suddenly improved, but because compounding needs decades to really show its power. A good return sustained for a long time will always beat a great return that only lasts a few years. Here's the catch, though. Compounding is boring. It doesn't reward you quickly, so most people abandon it before it has time to work. They chase a faster path instead. What can you actually do with this? Start whatever small saving or investing habit you've been putting off today. With a number so small it feels almost pointless. The goal isn't the size of the first deposit. The goal is giving time as many years as possible to do what it does best. Think about what that means for how you judge your own progress. A year from now, your savings might look almost identical to where they started. That can feel like failure. It isn't. Housel compares compounding to a snowball rolling down a very long hill. For most of the trip, it barely looks like it's growing. The size only becomes obvious near the bottom after it's had enough distance to build on itself. If you quit halfway down the hill because the snowball still looks small, you never get to see what the second half of the hill does. That's the part almost nobody sticks around for, and it's exactly the part that matters most. The second lesson is this: you are not as in control as you think, and neither is anyone else. Housel spends a full chapter on 2 ideas that sit right next to each other: luck and risk. Every financial outcome, good or bad, is shaped by forces outside your judgment. Bill Gates went to one of the only high schools in the world with a computer in the 1960s. That mattered. A different person, just as talented, without that specific stroke of luck, might never have built Microsoft. At the same time, risk works the same way in reverse. Someone can make a perfectly reasonable decision and still lose everything, simply because the odds didn't fall their way that time. So what does that mean when you look at other people's success or your own failures? It means you should judge your decisions by whether they were sound, not only by how they turned out. A smart choice can still lose. A reckless one can still win. If you only copy what worked for someone else without asking how much luck was involved, you're not learning a strategy. You're gambling on a story. Try this the next time you evaluate a financial decision, yours or someone else's. Ask what part was skill and be honest about what part was chance. That habit alone will make you far more careful about which successful behaviors are actually worth repeating. There's a quieter side to this lesson too. Because luck and risk are invisible from the outside, Housel suggests you should be slower to judge other people's financial choices and gentler with yourself about the ones that didn't work out. The version of you that made a decision 2 years ago didn't have the information you have now. Beating yourself up over an outcome instead of examining the reasoning behind it teaches you nothing except how to feel bad. Examining the reasoning teaches you how to decide better next time, regardless of how this particular bet turned out. The third lesson is this: save money for the freedom it buys you, not for the things it can purchase. This is where Housel pushes against a common assumption. Most people think of savings as a fund for a specific future goal: a house, a car, retirement. He argues for something bigger. Savings, held with no particular purpose attached, buy you options. They buy you the ability to leave a job that drains you, to wait for a better opportunity, to handle an emergency without panic. That flexibility, he argues, is worth more than almost anything money can directly buy. He also introduces the idea of leaving room for error, on purpose. Most financial plans are built assuming things go roughly as expected, but things rarely go exactly as expected. Building in a cushion, more savings than feels necessary, a plan a little more conservative than the math strictly requires, isn't pessimism. It's what allows you to survive the years that don't go according to plan, so you're still standing when the good years return. What's the action here? Pick one part of your financial life, your emergency fund, your monthly spending, your investment risk, and deliberately build in more cushion than feels required. Not because disaster is guaranteed, but because it's unpredictable. And cushion is what turns unpredictability from a crisis into an inconvenience. Housel calls this being reasonable instead of being rational. A spreadsheet might tell you the mathematically optimal move, but if that move keeps you up at night or tempts you to abandon your plan the first time the market drops, it isn't actually the best move for you. The strategy that works isn't the one that looks smartest on paper. It's the one you can actually stick with when things get uncomfortable, because a good plan you abandon in a panic is worth less than an average plan you stay with for 30 years. Now here's the twist in the book that tends to surprise people the most. The behaviors that help you get wealthy are almost the opposite of the behaviors that help you stay wealthy. Getting money often takes optimism, risk-taking, and putting yourself out there. Keeping money takes humility, fear of losing it, and a willingness to live below what you could technically afford. Housel points out that a lot of financial ruin doesn't come from bad luck. It comes from people who succeeded once, assumed the same aggressive approach would work forever, and never adjusted. Does that sound familiar? Think about anyone you know who made good money quickly and then lost it just as fast. It's not usually one bad decision. It's the refusal to shift from a growth mindset to a protection mindset once there's something worth protecting. So how does any of this actually show up in your life this week? Maybe it's the moment you compare your progress to someone on your phone who seems to have it all figured out, without knowing anything about their debt, their luck, or their story. Maybe it's the paycheck that arrives and disappears just as fast, spent on things that were supposed to make you feel like you'd arrived. Housel's point isn't that you should never enjoy your money. It's that enjoyment without a plan for time and error tends to quietly cost you the very freedom you were chasing in the first place. Think about the last big purchase you made because someone else's life looked a certain way, not because you sat down and decided it would genuinely improve yours. That's the comparison trap the book keeps circling back to. Everyone around you is playing a slightly different game, with a different income, a different starting point, and a different tolerance for risk. Borrowing someone else's financial habits without borrowing their entire situation is how reasonable people end up making decisions that don't actually fit their own life. Wealth, in his definition, isn't what you can see. It's not the car in the driveway or the vacation photos. Real wealth is the money you didn't spend. It's invisible, sitting there, giving you options nobody else can see. This isn't a replacement for actually reading the book. Housel backs every idea with more stories, more detail, and more nuance than a 12-minute summary can hold. Think of everything you just heard as a doorway into it, not the whole room. So go back to that moment you started with. Checking your balance before you check the weather. Maybe the number isn't the problem. Maybe it's what you've quietly believed about money your whole life without ever stopping to question it. Now you have. Every book has a page that changes you. Ink on a page, a shift in your mind. That's Inkcredible Mind. Subscribe, like, and drop a comment with the next book you want summarized or a lesson you've learned.